This is Chapter 3, The Bishops. Grace stepped off the airplane in Seattle wearing a gray pleated skirt, a starched white blouse, and a black blazer with the school's coat of arms proudly sewn on the left breast pocket. Marty had on gray slacks, a wrinkled white shirt, a paint-stained school tie, and a black blazer identical to Grace's, except for the tear in the right sleeve at the elbow and a bit of dried yolk on the lapel from the omelet he had just eaten. Dr. Beazle had insisted the twins wear their school uniforms so their uncle would recognize them when they arrived. On the flight, when he wasn't drawing in a sketchbook, Marty had slept. As he walked toward U.S. Customs with his passport in hand, despite his worry about his parents, he was nearly bursting with anticipation for this new adventure. Grace had slept some as well, but she was not nearly as excited. She had spent all her waking moments writing in her diary and plotting her and Marty's return to the Omega Opportunity Preparatory School, hoping their uncle would listen to reason and was not a homicidal maniac. As they waited in the customs line, Marty spotted an older couple just beyond the gate holding up a crude sign with O'Hara scribbled on it. He pointed them out to Grace and said, "Uncle Travis must be Mom's older brother." The gray-haired man was wearing a pair of blue jeans, an old sweatshirt with Air Force written on it in faded letters, and a pair of high-top sneakers. The woman was much whiter than the man, dressed in what looked like a flowered tint. "That can't possibly be Uncle Travis," Grace said. "$1 says it is. You're on." In the past 7 years, Grace had won a total of 211 and 11 $1 bills from him, each carefully tallied in her moleskins. Marty had not won a single dollar. Marty walked up to the couple. "Uncle Travis?" "No," the man said. "My name's Phil Bishop, and this is my wife, Bertha," the woman said, throwing her arms around them. "You poor, poor things." She drew them into her like a famished spider. "We are so sorry about what happened. You're so young." She went on and on. Marty thought that Bertha's dress disguised rolls of soft flesh, but what lay beneath was as hard as bricks. It was like being hugged by an oak tree. He thought he might suffocate before she finished, but managed to wiggle free and get a gulp of air. Grace was not as lucky. Bertha held her in a headlock from which she could not escape. "So where's Uncle Travis?" Marty asked. "He couldn't be," Phil started to answer. "He and his crew just got back this morning," Bertha interrupted. "Or he would have been here to meet you himself. He's been in the field, and he had a lot of things to attend to at home. We offered to stand in for him. I hope you're not too disappointed." "What crew?" Marty asked. "His merry band of pirates," Bertha said with a laugh. "So you're not relatives?" "No, but I hope you'll consider us family." "Wolf will explain everything when you see him," Phil said. "Let's get your bags." He tossed the sign into the garbage and started down the corridor. "Grace, you haven't said a word," Bertha said, still clutching her. Grace squirmed out of her grip and glared at Marty. "You owe me $1." Marty reached into his pocket and handed her his 212th $1 bill. When Phil jerked Grace's bag off the conveyor belt, he nearly dislocated his shoulder. "What in the blazes do you have in there?" "Books," Marty said. He had told Grace to leave the books behind, but she insisted on taking a 2-week supply, or by Marty's estimate, 60 pounds of words, which is how long Grace calculated it would take to convince her uncle to send them back to school. "I'll go see if they have a forklift," Phil said. He returned with a sturdy cart and pushed the bags to the parking lot. Half an hour later, they arrived at a beautiful lake in the center of Seattle. "This is great," Marty said. "Oh, this isn't where your uncle lives," Bertha explained. "He's 150 miles west of here." "But Seattle's on the west coast." "That's right," Phil said, dragging the luggage down a wooden dock to a small seaplane that had seen better days. "We're flying in this?" Grace asked. "I know she's not much to look at," Phil said apologetically, "but she can fly." He opened the storage compartment and a bag of food spilled out onto the dock. "We are going to die," Grace hissed in Marty's ear. Marty ignored her. He was used to her being afraid of everything. "Relax," he whispered. "I've flown in dozens of small planes, some worse than this." He helped Bertha pick up the bread and meat and said, "This is a lot of food." "We have 2 new stomachs to fill," Bertha said. "I'm your uncle's cook." among other things. No kidding, Marty said. I do a little cooking myself. He was being somewhat modest. At school, when he wasn't drawing, painting, sculpting, or cartooning, Marty was in the kitchen learning everything he could about the culinary arts. His long range plan was to support his comic book business by becoming a world famous chef. Even Dr. Beazle thought that this was a reachable goal. Marty's only regret in leaving so quickly was that he had missed his last season on making the perfect broccoli souffle. He missed his last lesson on making the perfect broccoli souffle. He peered into the crammed compartment and was delighted to see several items he could work with if Bertha would let him in the kitchen. No vegetables? We grow our own, Bertha said, in greenhouses, and they're all organic. Do you have broccoli? A whole row? That's great. That's bad, Grace thought. If this keeps up, I won't be able to separate Marty from Uncle Travis with a stick of dynamite, and he hasn't even met him yet. Phil looked up at the clouds gathering above the lake. We better take off. The weather's turning. If we don't, we'll be stuck on the mainland until the storm passes. The mainland? Marty asked. Your uncle lives on an island off the Washington coast, Phil said. Wow! 2 sticks of dynamite, Grace thought grimly. With a lot of grunting and groaning, Phil managed to get the twins' suitcases into the storage compartment. Marty and Grace climbed into the tattered back seats, and Bertha heaved herself into the co-pilot seat next to Phil. Buckle up, Phil said. They took off across the lake, heading west toward the Pacific Ocean. Unbeknownst to the occupants of the noisy seaplane, they passed right over the top of a large mansion perched on a hill overlooking a beautiful zoological park. Inside the mansion was a man sitting at a desk in a dimly lit room without windows. Lying next to the man was a magnificent, fully grown Caspian tiger, thought to have gone extinct a half-century earlier. The man's name was Noah Blackwood. The tiger's name was Natasha. The only thing on the desk was a computer screen and a speakerphone. Blackwood had gray hair, blue eyes, and teeth as straight and as white as piano keys. His manicured hand lay on the tiger's back. He enjoyed the feeling of the soft black and gold fur and the taut muscles beneath the tiger's skin. The phone rang. He punched a button and said, I've been waiting for your call. Sorry, a man said over the speaker. I was holding off until we had better news. And do you have better news? No, sir. We haven't found her yet. I'm very disappointed. We didn't expect her to abandon her camper in Salt Lake City after we fouled the engine. She didn't take a bus, train, or airplane out of town. She didn't have enough cash to rent a car, and her credit cards were all canceled. I suspect she's still in town someplace. And I suspect you are wrong, Blackwood said coldly. The tiger tensed, feeling sparks of anger from his master's fingertips. Did you search the camper? Yes, sir. It was full of books and assorted junk, but we didn't find what you're looking for. If she has it, it's with her. She has it. Blackwood swept his blue eyes slowly around his study, taking in the huge, hermetically sealed glass dioramas lining the wall. Each of them represented years of searching, a great deal of money, and no small amount of risk. And Wolf? He asked. As far as we know, he's still on the island. The Bishops took off this morning for the mainland, but Dr. Wolf wasn't with them. According to our source, they're picking up his niece and nephew. Ah, yes, the tragedy in the jungle. So the children are going to live with him? That's our understanding. He was pleased to hear this. Raising 2 youngsters would certainly complicate things for Travis Wolf. Anything else? Are you sending Butch out here to give us a hand? No. Butch is in the field on another assignment. He left yesterday and he'll be gone for some time. We could sure use some help here. Just find the woman. Blackwood terminated the call and looked down at his magnificent tiger. Soon, Natasha, he whispered. Very soon.